Hello, Beatbox world. How y'all doing? Welcome to my video on compression. My name is Poofster, and I shall be your gateway to music amazingness coming out of just your face hole. Now, as awkward as that sounds, let's get right into it. This is the original sample that we're using. So we got kicks, hats, a clap, and a lip roll with some throat bass. So in general, this is a very percussive loop. So we're going to treat it like we are treating drum. It's essentially beatbox is a drum kit coming from your face hole. So we're going to compress it and treat it like it's drum. This might not apply if you have a beatbox style very similar to, like, say, Gene Shinzaki, or like the really musical guys who use long drawn out notes, a lot of singing. Like MB14 probably doesn't compress his signals much. Tom Thumb might not compress some of his signals a lot. But this will be very useful for making very drum heavy things sound punchier, more full, and just more even and nice. So basically, this compressor is made of 5 important parts. We're going to ignore this, it's not very important. And a compressor is basically going to squish the signal that goes above a certain point. And this sets the point. This sets how much we squish it. And after it's squished, because it's low volume, we're going to bring the volume back up with this. So to show you how it works, actually, I'm going to set this back. Actually, I'll leave this where it is. I'll set the gain back to normal. And I'll actually set this live in front of you so you can see my thought process. So right now, this compressor is doing nothing. This is set at 0 dB. So that means this will only compress a signal that goes above 0 dB. And we were never ever clipping. We won't go above 0 dB. So this will currently do nothing. Still sounds normal. As we drag this threshold down, we're going to be drawing an imaginary line at this many dB. So let's say bring it down to about 10. So right now here around 10, there is a line that is drawn there. And any sound that goes louder than that line is going to get compressed. And that just basically means we're going to reduce its volume. The amount that the volume is reduced is, and this is kind of confusing, but it's simpler than it seems at first. The amount it's reduced is expressed as a ratio. So say we're at 10. If a sound comes in and it's -6, well, that is 6 decibels over where we set our threshold. Then we're going to take that 6 decibels over, and we're going to divide it by 4, because this is our 4 to 1. 6 divided by 4 is 1.5. So that means that the signal, instead of going up to -6, is actually going to go 1.5 decibels over our threshold. It's now only going to be about 8.5. So we've cut down a large bit of that volume spike, but we haven't affected any of the quiet things down here. So let's say we do that on about, let's do something rather dramatic, actually. Let's just to really hit it home. You wouldn't actually do this. Mine's 28, just for reference in case you can't see the numbers, is right down here. And listen to how bad this is probably going to sound. So you see, it sounds thin and just not nice at all. And that's because the majority of the signal is going above 28 decibels and is then getting squished by a factor of 4, and we don't want that. We just want to squish just the loud parts. So with the compressor disabled, we're going to look over here, and we're going to see where the this is going to be kind of weird, where the signal is kind of hanging out. What area of this meter is the not loud parts in general in? And I'll play it and let you see it. So you can see when it's not hitting all the way up here, it returns to somewhere in between -14 and -20. So the majority of this, like the not too loud but not very quiet sounds, are hitting about -14 to -20. So we're going to set right in front of those at about -14. So we're not going to be squishing any of that. We're only going to be squishing the stuff that goes above the sound of where all the main sounds are. And we're going to squish them by 4 to 1. This is going to give us a sound that is a little bit quieter, but won't sound thin anymore. So you can see things still have impact, but they don't sound super thin anymore. And they just sound like the volume has been turned down. And we'll use this knob called makeup gain, or in this case, just gain, to make up for the volume that we've lost. So if you imagine we got 14 to 4.0, if we divide -14 by 4, 4, 8, 12, we get 3.5 or 3 and a bit or something like that. So we're going to start about there and see how loud it comes out. Okay, so we can see that it is definitely squished. Our signal is more hanging out around right here, around -10 to -6. And we want this a little bit higher. So we're going to give a couple more decibels and see if it still sounds good. So you can see this peak meter is definitely not dipping as low in between when it goes up. It's been compressed, but it still sounds good and full. And all the reverb in between the hits is brought up a little bit. The hats are a little bit more audible. And I'm going to toggle this off, just to let you listen to the original, and then put it back on, just to hear how far we've gotten so far. So I think that's a significant improvement already. But the next two are kind of weird to just give you a general guideline on. So attack is how fast the compressor will bring the signal down after it's past the threshold. So as soon as we pass this 14.3, if this was set to 0, it will immediately cut the signal down. But if this is set up a little bit, like say around 14, 15, it'll let 14 or 15 milliseconds through before it starts compressing. And basically what this does is it lets us keep the impact, because usually sounds, like I said, I've been saying this whole time with transients, the transient is the very beginning of a sound, and it's where the loudest part is. You can see all these are like a big, actually let's zoom in on one of these. You can see it's a hit and then it dulls down, then it's a hit and it dulls down, and a hit and it dulls down. The hit is called the transient. And that transient is saved when you make the compressor wait a tiny bit, so that initial crack won't be taken away and you won't lose all that oomph that comes from things like snares and kicks. You want the initial big crack, but you don't want the whole sound to be like huge. So you're going to basically tell the compressor, wait about 14 milliseconds, then start compressing it. So you still get that initial crack, but it's quick, so it makes it sound nice and snappy. But you don't get a just volume boost. You just keep the crack and keep the nice crispiness, but you bring down the whole volume. Release is kind of like the opposite. It's after a sound crosses the threshold the other way. So if we're already being compressed with a really loud signal, and then it gets quiet again and it goes below -14, how fast the compressor will return to doing nothing. And you would think, well, why would you want to compress anything under -14? I'll just set this to like instant, 1 millisecond. But it can sound juddery because the compressor is turning immediately on and off, and it can sound weird. So, in general, leave it a little bit longer. Leave it like maybe 200-ish milliseconds, 300-ish milliseconds. Don't make it super long because then you'll just end up, the compressor will take forever to turn off and will end up destroying your really quiet bits that you want to save. So these are mostly set by ear. You can start with these values and then just start jogging them and see what sounds good mostly. But these are for drums, pretty much ish the values that you want to start with. It'll give you a ballpark. Don't copy all these numbers directly and expect it to work because your beatbox will be at a different volume. Your kicks might be louder, your hi-hats might be louder or softer. You just might have a higher output mic that just has a higher volume all through your beatbox, even though you're not more powerful. Things are going to be different in every situation. So these individual numbers are going to change. But in general, you can kind of start here-ish and then change them from there and see where you get. But anyway, that is the gist of compressors. There's a lot more you can get into, but I suggest just getting a simple compressor, not a crazy complicated one, and just fuck around with it for a while. See what happens. Try to get some good sounds. And if you do hit any roadblocks, just leave a comment and hopefully I can explain them to you or direct you to a video that can explain a lot better than me. But anyway, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I love you, my beatboxer people. Big esh to all of you. Peace out.